tonight. It's also going the Yartzheit of the Archaim Kadesh. So, Le'iling Nishmasai, our Chabura that learns Yerushalmi finished Masechet Sanhedrin just yesterday. So, Le'iling Nishmas, Rabbi Chaim ben Atar, Zechrona Levracha, Shimshon Chaim ben Nachman, and Rina Sarah Bas, Nicole Aaron, Ben Tata.
Yitzchak Shlomo ben Avram Yaakov.
Yitzchak Shlomo ben Avram Yaakov. The Neshama should have an aliyah. The Gemara in Sanhedrin finishes with the following statement: Ki yotzebem b'sreifa, hi vehein b'sreifa. The Gemara talks about sreifas. The Gemara talks about sreifas kohen gadol. Most of us probably remember Masechtas Makkos begins with Keitzad Edom Nasim Zoimim. The Gemara over there says, where is he coming from? The Gemara says he's coming from Sanhedrin, but if you look in Sanhedrin, the last parak in Sanhedrin is the parak of Kol Yisrael Shem Chayil Gadol Ma'bo. And in Hanechnokin, it talks about Sreifas Bas Koyin. The Yerushalmi is the other way around. The Yerushalmi has Kol Yisrael Shem Chayil Gadol in parak Eser and 10, and has the last parak with Eilach Nokin, and the last drasha is He B'Sreifa Vein Zomeh B'Sreifa. So like the Yerushalmi, Makkos really does come directly after this sugya, and that's what the Gemara says. When Eidim Zoimim say a testimony that he and she deserve Sreifa, they'll get Sreifa. Ki Yotzeh Ben B'Skila, He Ve'Hein B'Skila. Right? Only if he gets if he would get chenek and she gets sreifa, that's when the drasha is that he v'lo yizomimel. Hadron Allah Elohein Anachnakim v'chula Mesechtes Sanhedrin. Hadron Allah. Mesechta Sanhedrin with the Hadrochan Lon. Hadroch Mesechta Hadrochan Daitch Mesechta Daitch Lon. Lo Yisnashim Nam Mesechta Sanhedrin Lo Yisnashim Elon Lo Yibamo Hadein Lo Yibamo Do Osi. Hadroch Mesechta Sanhedrin Hadrochan Daitch Mesechta Sanhedrin Hadrochan Lo Yisnashim Nam Mesechta Lo Yisnashim Nam Lo Do Osi. Before I say the Yerutz, I just want to say that this Chavrusa Shaf, this is already the 10th Mesech that we're learning together.
Nine.
But this was 9. And Baruch Hashem, it started with 2 of us, and the Shiur has grown. And you want to know who gets the schar for this? Louis Shiner. Because when he made a Siyum together with Rabbi Koren a bunch of years ago, I think we said then, if he can do it with his busy schedule, so why shouldn't we do it?
Nachum gets also a very, that he pushed us to do it, and he got us to do it, and Baruch Hashem, we finished, we're doing it 4.5 years.
Right? Yeah, Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem, we're doing it, and
we have Baruch Hashem, and we started today Avodah Zarah, Baruch Hashem. We
so
try to do.
Who wants to join? We're doing every day 6:15 to 7 o'clock. We're doing Avodah Zarah. It's an easier Masechta, and
it's very geschmack.
It's an easier Masechta, and and it coincides with the Daf Yomi.
Avada. He wrote some of Fanecha. I do not will ever say state to us. I'm going to send by the Mazev to Emmanuel Oilum Abba. Chanin ba Papa, Rami Papa, Nachman Papa, Choy ba Papa, B'mori ba Papa, Rafim ba Papa, Rochas ba Papa, Chasub ba Papa, Adamor ba Papa, Adar ba Papa, Bedor ba Papa. V'harav no Adonai Leheinu. As the race to us chafini v'zam chabeis Yisrael. V'niyah kolonu anach v'tzen v'tzam chabeis Yisrael. Kol yed yishmech v'lam zoy esach lish marvei techmen v'tzach kilon hili. Hilam tom b'chech man evesh loilum le'echsh kikodechi kibam chiyason. Baruch ato Adonai amdenu chukech. Amen, amen, amen. Salavot. Moedim anach v'nach Adonai v'lav v'seinu. Samtach ken miyosh beisamesh samtach ken miyosh kronis shon mashkim vehem mashkim on mashkim devetoy mashkim dorm batem on men vehem men on men kam schar vehem men vehem kam schar on rotz vehem rotz mar rotz chaim abba men rotz be'ashach shem ba'atem tudem be'ashachas an shedor men lechs men neftach bach yi rotz sam fanach adonai le hay keshem shtatan le sam mesach Sanhedrin kein tazven le haschem mesach swar machem le sam limud lamed lishon lasos is kol divrei so tamator sech be have schus kol atanoim ba meroim betamid cham yamad leave Lazar Vilanu It's also Moshe and Yecheskel. They're also members of this Shiur. Avada. Shaloi Tomash Atar Mepino and Pizaran and Pizar Zarenu Ad Oilam Biskaim Bonim Bisalecha Tancha Oisach B'Shach B'Tishma Alech V'Akitzaisi He Tesichecha Ki Vi Yir B'Yamech V'Sivach Shon Eschaim Oirech Yam V'Inam V'Sman Shrokovod Adonai Zay Ma'yitein Adonai B'Reches Amoy Ba'Shuloim Bizugas.
Yiskada v'yiskada Shmei Rabba.
Amen.
Amad Yosid L'Schadoso V'Lechayom Mesayo V'Lasoko Yosef L'Chayom L'Mivdei Kato D'Yishleim V'Leshachlecho Hechla Begave L'Mekat Balchono Nichro Menaro V'Lasova Balchono D'Ishmayo L'Asro V'Yamlech Kutshe B'Richim V'Achuse V'Yikore V'Yatzmach V'Kone Meshicha
Amen.
L'Chai Kone V'Yamechom V'Chai L'Chobeis Yisrael B'Agolo V'Zman Kore V'Imri Amen.
Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabba Mizvarach Li'olam Yomei Omayo Yizvarach
Yizbarach V'Shtavach V'Smor V'Samam V'Snasei V'Sadov V'Salav V'Salosh Mei Tekitche B'Richim
B'Richu.
V'Eino Mekov V'Chutzu V'Shiros V'Tishvachos V'Nechem V'Sinem V'Nem V'Yamo V'Imri Amen.
Amen.
Aiso V'Rabon Avata V'Teva Kol Tamidesa V'Teva Kol Mandros Kemeraiso Divasa Deni V'Ti V'Chol Asa V'Asa Yehei Loi L'Chon Shol V'Ramachini V'Chiz V'Rach V'Nechayin Arichen Im Zayne Revicha V'Konim V'Konim V'Indem Shmaya V'Arov V'Imri Amen.
Amen.
Shol V'Ram Shmaya V'Chayin Tov V'Lein V'Kol Yisrael V'Imri Amen.
Amen.
Oy Zeh Shalom V'Imrai Ma'aviyah Zeh Shalom Aleinu V'Kol Yisrael V'Imri Amen.
Amen. Mazel tov. Mazel tov. Let's get some Nana Nachman music over here. Mazel tov. Simen tov, mazel tov, simen tov, mazel tov, simen tov, b'adim simcha. Nei lo, nei, simen tov, mazel tov, simen tov. Mazel tov, Moshe. Mazel tov, yeah. Mazel tov, mazel tov. Amen. Mazel tov, mazel tov. Amen, amen. B'adim simcha. Oh wow! Okay. It's a Chavis Machol. Man. Mazel tov. Yeah, now it's going to be a share. Mazel tov. Beide. Gam Chaim, gam Zera Shimshon. K'tzat. No, Adrabah. Okay. Okay, Marav Rabbi Isai, good evening. Thank you for coming for this special evening. The Rabbi Chaim Kanievski's Yartzheit. Zera Shimshon, Rabbi Chaim, and we made a Siyum Baruch Hashem. So we'll begin with a piece from the Zera Shimshon on page Reish Lamed Ches, letter Hey. Let's begin with that, and there are photocopies here for Rabbi Chaim Kanievski, which we'll distribute Be'ezus Hashem momentarily after we do a shtikala from the Zera Shimshon. Rabbi Shimshon Chaim b'Menachem Echol. He wrote a sefer and called it Zera Shimshon, and said anybody who learns the sefer is zeicha to groise Yeshuos. When we made tonight's Siyum, we mentioned in the Siyum, Sha'anu mashkimim v'heim mashkimim. Anu amelim v'heim amelim. Anu mashkimim lebate kinesiyas ubate midrashes. How appropriate it is. Anu mashkimim lebate kinesiyas ubate midrashes. The Gemara says, all the curses, all the brachas that Bilam made were nepach leklala chutz from ma toivu alecha Yaakov. That's what we have left. So appropriately so, let's do a piece from both the Rabbi Chaim Kanievski and the Zera Shimshon on ma toivu alecha. Letter Hey, Rabbi Isai. Page Reish Lamed Ches. מוישה, אתה יכול להסתכל איתי, בבקשה. הנה יש לך שמה. מה טויבו עליך יעקב משכן עשיך ישראל? יש לדקדק, asks the Zera Shimshon, בלושן של מה טויבו עליך? What is the reason that the nevuah, and Rabbi Isai, this is a nevuah. If it's a chelik of the Torah Kedosha, even though it came out of Bilam's mouth, even the donkeys words are chelik of Torah Kadosha. Because Vatiftach Hashem es pia osoi. And as Chazal say, that was the message to Bilam too. You're going to say, says the Eibishter, what I want you to say, not what you think you want to say. That's why he tried to curse, but it came out the way the Eibishter wanted, which is a bracha. So every word is meduyik. So when it says ma toivu alecha, asks the Zera Shimshon, shouldn't it not just say, should it not just say, Toivu ohadai shalamer toivu alecha Yaakov? It should have just said toivu alecha Yaakov. What's the lashon of ma toivu? V'yesh loymar shesoid hamezuzah. This is very kabbalistic. Shesoid hamezuzah kosvu hamikubalim. The koyach and the secret of a mezuzah is shehu zaz moves. The word mezuzah could be divided from one word into two words. Zaz moves. Shamovesh yazuz. V'oid kosu shebe'emtza ha'oisyois. The two letters, the first letter and the last letter, are the mem and the tuf, which is the letters mace. Lahafrid, to be mafrid, the misa, lahafrid, to separate it. Nichnasim zayin vav, dahainu mezuzas. The letters zu. Mezuzah zayin vav is 13 each. 13 times 2 is 26. Shu b'gematria, shem hami yuchad, yud kei vav kei. V'zel she'amar, it says in the Zohar, Kosev shmi, write my name al pisachech, on your doorways. V'zeh Hashem marchik moves umafrida. It's marchik the moves, meaning the mem and the taf, which are the first and the last letters of mezuzah, is mace, and al yedei mezuzah at marchik umafrid et moves. Bira inyan lefi arkenu. When a person builds a structure, he's being mitzamtzem, a place in this world. Every binyan is, in a certain sense, something which is taking away from the expansiveness of this world. And there's a certain din, state, even the mazikim come and have a taina. That's why when we build a house, there's a whole way you make a Chanukah Sabayis. There's certain procedures that are done. When you have holes that were open, you close up a window and you mimayit and the makayim, the halach is you have to leave a little spot. There's certain dinim. Tzimtzum ha-makayim brings din. So, in order to counter that, you need the only person who's capable of countering the din and mixing in rachamim is the Eibishter Alein. And that's the Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei. That's the shame of that name that is a shame kuloi of rachamim. So mezuzos have in them that koyach. V'yadua, says the Zera Shimshon, every single building in the world needs a mezuzah because it brings a din of mavis, except one type of building. Which building doesn't need a mezuzah? Batei kenesiyos u batei midrashos. Farvos, it's mitzamtzem. The teretz is v'yadua shebatei kenesiyos petur min hamezuzah. The lama peturim frek the Zera Shimshon. Why are they potter? Hatzimtzum shel habinyan l'chayris chal shama. Lama ein po baya shel din. Mipnei sheshom ein moves. A mokoim of beis hakneses, a mokoim of beis hatfilo, ki heim chayenu. It's a mokoim of beis chayenu. Ze bayis molei chiyus. A bias of molei chiyus has no tzimtzum whatsoever. Ve'ein tzorech lahafrido. You don't have to be mafrid anything. There's no misa bechlal v'sekleptzach. Ela adarabah. Sham yesh hachayim. There is punkt verkehrt, it's life in that building. Kihi beis chayenu. That's called the house of our life. In a house of a shul where you daven, in a house where you learn Torah, it's an ishda kain misa. If there's no misa, you don't need a mezuzah. V'lechein omar ma toivu. Ma toivu shehem gematria samaches 68 hainu chayim. The remez zog the Zera Shimshon of ma toivu. Ma toivu is 68. How good is it? It's the toiv. Ma is also gematria Adam. That he doesn't say, but relate this too. Adam is gematria 45. Ma toivu is gematria chayim, and it's also gematria chacham. Ches, chof, mem, chacham 68. Gematria chayim. Baba chacham. Chachma techaya es ba'aleha. A chacham is a source of chayim. So a bias shell chacham, a bias shell chayim, darf nicht haben kein mezuzah. You don't need a mezuzah. Then, v'oimer, ma'toivu oholecha Yaakov. Lefi, sha'kosev oimer, titein emes li Yaakov. Yaakov Avinu is the person responsible for what's known as titein emes li Yaakov. Yaakov is ish tam Yoshev Aholim. Yaakov is the person who has a koyach. If anyone has a koyach to have a kvius in their welt, Bikesh Yaakov Leishev Beshalva. Yaakov not verstanden. He thought after he finished with all of his nisyonis by Lavan, he thought I can already. The Berger said not yet. Eventually, there was Toivu Alecha. The last 17 years of his life, he already had Ruyakite. Zog Heilige Zera Shimshon. When you take the word mace and you put an aleph in front of mace, you're turning mace into emes. Zog Zera Shimshon. The same way the word mezuzas takes machta hafrodo in the misa, the same way we said that your machnes Zayin Vav, which is a gematria of 26, the name of the Eibishter, that's Mafrid the Moves. The same side is true by Emes. How so? Zog the Zera Shimshon, Yena Aleph, Sha Aleph, the letter Aleph of the word Emes, Mitztayeret Yud Vav Yud. Take an Aleph, Rabbi Isai. Let's see if we have anywhere, you have an Aleph in your Zera Shimshon, right? You just have this Aleph. How is an Aleph the tzir, the form of the Aleph? Shteit and Chazal are 3 letters. The Aleph has a Yudale here, a Yudale on the bottom upside down, and a line in the middle. What letter is that line? A Vav. Yud, Vav with a Yud, Yud with a Vav is 10, 26. The tzir of Aleph is a tzir of the tzura of this word carries in it the Shem Hashem. State b'shem the Talmidei Hagra, that the letter Aleph, the Yud on top represents Mayim. For this Vav is like the Rakia, the Shamayim and the Oretz. Those are these 2 Yudala. The Yud of Vayitzer, so there are Yud von Oiven, and so there are Yud von Inten. These are the 2 Yuds that the HaKadosh Baruch Hu created, Bashafen, Ki Beko Hashem Tzur Oilamim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. Oilam Haba v'Oilam Hazeh. There's a letter Yudala before the Yud K, and there's a letter Yud in the Hey itself. That's Mahapach the Dalet to a Yud. Zog the Zera Shimshon. V'hi gematria chavav, v'hi smucha la'ois meis, v'nase emes. Emes kushtakoi. Emes kayam la'ad. Zokt the Zera Shimshon. A bias of Torah is a bias shel emes. Every house, like we said, if you just joined us, every house is mitzamtzem mokim in this world and brings a potential of misa. The tikkun is mezuzas. Mem and tov are the letters mace. Inside the letters mace is mezuzah, zayin vav, yud kei vav kei, it's gematria 26. Lahafrid et amoves. Zok the Zera Shimshon, bayis echod. There's one type of house which is Beis Hashem, Beis Chayenu, doesn't need a mezuzah, because the bayis is called Kulei Chayim. That is Zok the Zera Shimshon. Matoivu oholecho Yaakov. Das is the koyach from Yaakov. Titein emes li Yaakov. Mishum hochi amri. Yaakov Avinu loy meis. Yaakov Avinu hat sich mischaber gewenkt to the Eibishter. He connected himself to the Eibishter in such a way that he is the Briach HaTichon that goes from the beginning all the way till the end. Meaning through Yaakov, Avram had a Yishmael. Yitzchak had an Esav. Like it says in this week's Parsha, V'achrisei adei ad. They're finished. Aber Yaakov Avinu, Chotam Meshulish loy b'mehera yinotek. Yaakov Avinu, Avram, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov, that's already Titein Emes li Yaakov. Says Medrash and Chazal, Yaakov asher podo es Avraham. Yaakov Avinu was poida Avram Avinu, all of his efforts that Avram Avinu to establish the world, Yaakov Avinu was poida that. That's Titein Emes li Yaakov. Abayis shel Yaakov. Yaakov ish tam yoshev oholim. Das is a bias from MS. A bias from MS doesn't have to have adarab. What are you putting a mezuzah on? That's a mezuzah b'chlal. Ze bias shalom. En maves bebayit hazeh. That's why, says Chazal, all the other things that Bilam says was nepach le klole. Chutz me matoiv alecha Yaakov. Ze mekor habrocha. Matoiv umanoyim that were able on the night of the Orach Chaim HaKodesh's Yartzheit to be able, like we just read in the Siyum, Anu mashkimim v'hei mashkim, Anu mashkimim lebotei knesiyos ubotei medrashos, because that's Ki'em Chayenu. Before we go to the Zera Shimshon, before we go to the Orach Chaim HaKodesh, you can already take, please, should be hopefully enough copies over here for the Olam. B'vakasha. I'll just tell you, the Gemara said that there was, you get the original. The Gemara says that there was a woman who had longevity living in Bavel for a very long time. Longer than normal. She lived so long, and the Gemara says, Shteit leman yirbu yamecha al ha'adama. Katuv al ha'adama. How is it possible that in Chutz La'aretz, in Bavel, she was living for such a long time? They came to Rabbi Yochanan, so they asked, Rabbi Yochanan said, ask her what her minhagim are. So she said she would get up early and go to shul and stay late. Azoi shteit. Zog the Gemara. That's why she is able to live a long time. But botei kinesias or botei medrashos are not shayich to this world. They are shayich to Eretz Yisrael. When you go into a shul, you should use a passport. Because you're going into a makkah and you're going to, that's why Sheikh Nagabar and Megillah, all of the places that are Botei Knesses and Botei Midrashos will be Ne'ekar and they'll go there. Why? Because they're Beis Chayenu. They're houses of life. Lamer Zen. Zukt the Orach Chaim HaKodesh. Reb Chaim ben Atar Zchusa Yogan Aleinu Oiv Zayin Yartzheit Mamish. To say his words are Mamish Svaisoisav Doivers Bekever. Zog Orach Chaim HaKodesh. On the pasuk of Ma Toivu Alecha. Kuf Memtes. Thank you. Pirush Sheyesh Bi Yisrael Kat Ma Toivu Alecha Yaakov Mishkin Oisecha Yisrael. Yesh b'Yisrael, there are different kvutzos. The Orach Chaim HaKadosh is going to talk about, in Besach HaKol, 4 different groups of people. If you see on the top of the page, you don't have it and you don't have it, you do have it over here. You're the only one who also does. In the state, Ma toivu alecha Yaakov mishkan esecha Yisrael, kenachalem nitu, Keganois alay nahar, Ke'oiholim nota Hashem karozim alei mayim. There are 4 groups that are mentioned. The Rabbi Chaim HaKadosh is going to tie these 2 psukim together. Zokter Azoi. First of all, he says, Kat shekoivim itim la Torah. There's one group that's kovei itim la Torah. The kat she'oiskim bo yosed tkua, which is that not just they're koveya, but they're like a firm, they're a yated, which means that they're like implanted. What do you say? A foundation, right? Implanted. Keneged balei itim amar matoivu alecha. So there are people who are kaveya to Torah and ba'im kemo ba'im la ohel, which means they come into the tent, which is not a permanent, but their kesher is like an oil. And then there are v'keneged kata takua amar mishken oisecha v'oid niskaven keneged beizmanim shohayu b'midbar shohayu beineim ba'oil d'chsiv, like it says v'yishol oil ala mishkan. Matoivu alecha means that Klal Yisrael was biyishuv, that on the one hand, when there was an oil, the Shechina was shayre beineim, so that was their source of their chiyus, and also Mishkan Esecha, Omar Beloshen Rabim, Lefi Sheyesh Hadrogas Ba'oil, Oil Moyed Mishkan Lefnim and Aproiches, there are many madregas. Says the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, there are 4 madregas of Yidden that are shayach to Torah. He's at top of the next column. Valderech Shakosiv Medaber, the pasuk that speaks about the 4 different madregas. One is Kishmuel Hanavi, Shahaya Misoivev Kol Eretz Yisrael. Some people, some Talmidei Chachamim, would take Torah and teach it to Jews everywhere. That was the midah of Shmuel Hanavi. Wherever there were Yidden, Mistovev, he would go around to Eretz Yisrael. That's one. Lelamed the Yisrael Torah u'mitzvahs b'chol shana. Then you had tzaddikim who were kavua. They learned Torah. Lilmaid ulelamed lahayrais mishpat v'ki akatay medes belishkas agazos oisakes b'Torah. They were rabbonim, they were tamidei chachamim, where their job was to take care of Klal Yisrael in any shaylas and any halachas. That's kat number 2. V'hi beged harishan atzmai. It's like the first group of the Shmuel Hanavis. Ela shemavakesh Hashem yovay aleihem. Shmuel, on the other hand, went to them, and these people, you could come to them. Moisef aleihem Shmuel shei mistavev la'iraisam. Those are 2. 3, Kad Gimel aleimedes Torah l'shma, who learns Torah, and that's all they do. Lahavin v'lahaskil v'lahavin imrei noyim. Yesera lekat rishayna shaloimedes v'lamedes. They're not out. You can have a younger man, he's sitting and learning, he doesn't want a shtela, he doesn't want a rabbonis, although it's a shum davar. You know what he wants? 10 little mod. Rabbi Chaim, Zichron Levracha, was like that, until the other made him a shiga and said, no, we need you. But all Rabbi Chaim went in his younger years, all he did was just learn, and his father said, write svar. But all he did was just learn and learn and learn, and eventually, Kol habayreach min hakavod. When you run away from the kavod runs after you. Zeish talmidei chachamim lo ichpat lehem klum. They're not interested in it. Just they want to learn. Eventually, find out who they are. But that's kat shlishi. They're not going to teach. They're not going lelamed. They're just sitting and learning. The kat revi machzekes yedei loimdim. These are people. Yoitzim lemelachta. They leave every single day and go to work. Limtza terev lo'odam. And they, without them, im ein kemach, ein Torah. These 4 groups, the Shmuel Hanavis, the Sanhedrin, those loimdei lishma, and those people who support and learn Torah, are 4 that are mentioned in the next pasuk after Matoivu Alecha. Let's see it inside. One more time. Ma'toivo alecha Yaakov Mishkan Esecha Yisrael. Now, kinecholim nitoyu, like rivers that are flowing. That's one. Kiganois, like a gan, alei nahar, that's at the side of the river. Ke'ohalim nota Hashem, like ohalim, tents, which HaKadosh Baruch Hu implanted. Ke'arazim, like cedar, alei mayim, says the Heilig Or Chaim HaKadosh. These four groups that I mentioned are the brachas that Bilam gave to Klal Yisrael. Keneged kitoi shel Shmuel amar kinecholim nitu shem oisim kanachal hazeh, like a stream whose water spreads out as a stream flows from place to place, so too these Talmidei Chachamim shenoito meimav memokam lemokam ulishtois b'menu. K'moi kein zu shetorchim atzam lahashkos tzomei mayim lamayim chayim. Rabbi Yankov Galinsky, Zechreinu Levracha, Fleigain, a Magid, Reb Shalom Shvadron, Zechreinu Levracha, would go from place to place to give chizik, to teach, to go ahead and be mechazik to oilam. Reb Revda, Alev was gegangen from place to place to be mechazik to oilam, to teach Torah, to give chizuk. Keneged kat beis is kanois alei nahar. Then you have a garden. The garden doesn't go anywhere, but it's by a river, it's lush, and you can take whatever you want from it. Those are the Yidden in the Sanhedrin, those are the Talmidei Chachamim. Shunoto v'chol haroitze lehenes yovei v'yehene. The Vilsanovim kim b'vakasha. V'gam alichem imenu. You could take the peiris if you want, and you could take it back home with you. You could take a psak halacha, and you can carry it home with you. V'zonim arechoikim. Kemoikem gan notui belishkas agozes. V'chol haroitze lehenes yovei v'yehene. That's one group of Klal Yisrael devoted to the tzibur. He continues, Ka'ohalim nota, ki Yaakov ish tam yoshev ohalim, who sits lilmaid la'atzmai. V'omer loshen netiya, ke netiya azoi shekol shehi mish yashenes moisifa shirashim. The longer it stays, the more rooted it is. And then you have Keneged Kat Dalid, the fourth group, Ka'arozim. Arozim is Ramaz la'ashirei ha'am. Those are for the people, Baruch Hashem, who are working, who are successful. Baalei koima, baalei koyach, u'gevura ba'olam hazeh. Avol ein oisim peiros b'Torah, lefi she'enim loimdim b'Torah. But they're busy. They're going out in a Baruch Hashem. They're working. They need to. That's their chelik. V'kvar kasafti b'kama mekoimes. Ki pri ha-Torah hu levada yikra pri. I've written, says the Or Chaim HaKadosh, that when it says pri, imru tzadik ki toiv ki pri malaleim yoichelu, pri refers to Torah. V'ayin ma shepirish b'zoy b'posuk le'sashches eitzo ki mimenu toichal. Don't cut down the tree because you need the tree, because that's where you get your fruits. Roim is leba'alei Torah shu oiseh pri. V'omar, and for this group, which is the fourth group, it says Ka'arozim alei moyim. The arozim are by the water, which means shechozkam gamku alei mayim shia Torah, she'ein Torah ela mayim. V'fi says shemachzikim yedei u'anoshim aloimdim b'Torah shenimshu l'mayim v'yehenu mehamayim atzmam. You should know that an erez that's planted next to the water, so he, of course, that erez has its roots in the ground, drinks from that water. Zokt, and it's underlined. Zokt Or Chaim HaKadosh, ki amachsik yedei loimdei Torah. If you're machsik, that a person, you allow a person as a learning ruyig, you help a person who's loimet Torah to be able to learn. Choylek imahem sechar. You're a shittif with him. You're a partner in his reward, in his schar ki yadua. V'chavana b'chol ma'amar loymar shekol Yisrael. Ale Yidin, those who are learning Lishma, those who are going out to teach, and those who are going around, those who are staying in their Beit Batei Midrashim, and those who are Machzik Torah. Kol Yisrael oimdim b'shoirish hakedusha zois haTorah. Afilu ha'oiskim be'inyan hazeh. Even the people who are going out to work, Ale Yidin, Ale Zok Torah Chaim HaKodesh. So when it says Matoivu Alecha Yaakov Mishkan Oisecha Yisrael, which was the final bit, the bracha that remained in Klal Yisrael, it spreads out to all Chelkei Klal Yisrael. All of us who are busy with whatever esek it is, b'Torah unishnar b'Torah. Those who are isek with either Gemilas Chasodim and Galat Arbeten. Zok Torah Chaim HaKodesh, Shoirish HaKedusha Zois HaTorah, Afilu Oiskim Be'inyan Olam Hazeh. Every single person is a Yida Vissen. The melacha that you do is a Heilige Arbet. It's holy work, because if it's a avodah that supports Torah, it's a chelik of what's called arozim, the cedars, which are alei mayim. Yerushalmi Zol helfen Rabbi say that we should be zoicha in the schus of Matoivu Alecha Yaakov, the one, like we said, that has been left over after all is said and done. All of Bilam's brachas that turn to klaus chutz for Matoivu Alecha. We should be zoicha yeda einer lilmay Torah, lelamed v'lechazik Torah. Medem zoma alle zoicha zayin zu alle brachas, alle Yeshuas, Mashiach tzidkeinu b'mheir v'yameinu.